Hello, I'm Chuck Phillip, and welcome to a Southern Home Talk edition of Southern Stories I'm doing on Organic School. This is going to be part 5, so if you haven't seen the other episodes, I encourage you to go take a look at them. But folk dancing was one of the biggest programs they had at the school when I went there, and I believe it started all the way back to the 1920s. You can see in this photograph, this is probably one of the very first ones. And it could have gone before the 1920s, but I kind of feel confident that it started sometime in the 20s. And you can see this is another photograph here on campus. I kind of wonder what that court is there. It looks like maybe a shuffleboard court. I know they had a tennis court there when I was there. That's where I learned to play tennis. And of course, this is them getting ready to do some folk dancing. This is going to be on the west side of the campus where the science building is now. That was actually the boarding house that you see there in the background, and then that was torn down, and then the gym was built there around 70 or 71, because I remember this old structure being there in 69. And so there's a science building now where the old gym was, and so this would have been taken right to the left of this, I guess back in the 30s. Okay, well here's some other girls. This is probably in the 1920s still. That building, I'm not sure what, that may be the library, it may be torn down. They had several buildings that were torn down over the years. And so this one's right there by the Dahlgren buildings. They also danced around that a lot as well. That's probably 1930s as well. Now, the kids were involved in folk dancing. It may have gone all the way down to kindergarten. It looks like it did. I know it probably at least started first grade. And here's some other pictures of some kids out here practicing this without the uniforms on. And that's Doug and Kathy Snow at the Bell Building. And this probably was around 1970 or 71. And same year, or thereabout, this is going to be just north of the Bell Building. And here's some other pictures there. This is probably going to be in the 70s, this photograph. On the west side, probably close to the Gaston building. And there's another one right there, closer to the Gaston building. And so the way this kind of worked is you would line up with your partner, and then after everybody got lined up, then the piano player would start playing a song to come out to. And they actually drug this piano out there every time to do this. And that piano probably weighed close to 500 pounds, maybe more. And there's a picture of it there. It's in the museum if you want to take a look at it. And it was also Piney Wood Gaston's piano from 1950. And so basically they just did this folk dancing all over the campus. You can see this one was taken by the old library, which is next to the new library, which is part of the college now. But they did this downtown Fairhope and other towns throughout the South. The one on the right side is inside the gym. This is actually on the tennis courts itself. And of course, one of the dances they did that was pretty impressive was a sword dance. And you can see them out there with these wooden swords. This is actually in the Bell Building Museum now. But they would do this dance, and they would eventually was able to fabricate this star, as you see in this photograph here from the 30s. And I just really was impressed by them being able to do that and do it moving. And this one here is probably taken in the probably 80s, I think, early 80s, maybe late 70s. But you can see that this was pretty popular. Deep South Folk Festival, 1962. It looked like a 4-day event. And it made local television stations. This photograph is in Washington, D.C. in 39. And then folk dancing at White Springs. So they took this trip on the road, took buses, stayed in hotels. And so here's some of these girls with the dresses. Of course, it's black and white photograph, but these are really pretty dresses. I mean, they really are. Here's a little bit better picture there. This is also by the Dahlgren building. And by the way, that magnolia tree is still there. This is probably one of the best color photographs I've seen that's actually old. This is probably 1940s. And you can take a look at these outfits at the museum. They have them there. I also have them up on the wall. I still think they're kind of cool. I could envision girls still wearing these. But that's Piney Gaston right there. She was one of the folk dancing teachers. And there were many others over the years. I mean, if you want to pause the video, you can read that. Now, that's a picture of her, I guess, getting an award for her service. Jimmy Lowell was another one. Miss Cox / Miss Newell. She was taught lessons, but she also played the piano for these too. She was also a piano player and a piano teacher too. Now, this lady here, that's Natalie Crozer. Now, I got to looking at this lineup there in the annual. I said, wait a minute, this looks like Three's Company. Hell, look at that. It does. I says, I guess everybody's got their twins somewhere, but I got stuck on this page for probably 10 minutes because of that. I thought it was pretty cool, that's why I put it in there. Now, Miss Parker was my folk dancing teacher. She was the last folk dancing teacher I had too. And so somehow or another I'd caught wind that if you refused to dance with the partner she picked, that she'd kick you out of folk dancing. And so I talked to Scott Johnson about that. I said, you know, Scott, from what I hear, that you get kicked out if you refuse to dance with the partner she chooses. Well, shoot, let's just refuse to dance with the partner she chooses. I says, all right, well, let's see if it works. So we purposely were late arriving to folk dancing at the gym. That's where they were having at the time. And sure enough, we were the last two to show up, and we walked in the door, and she was kind of a little bit mad we were late, and so she was picked a partner for Scott, and Scott says, well, I'm not going to dance with her, so that's it. Get out. You're fired from the group. So she got rid of him. So then she came to me and says, all right, Chuck, you're going to be dancing with her now. I said, well, I'm not going to dance with her. You're gone as well. You're both kicked out. So we immediately left because we didn't want to change our mind. We was glad to get kicked out of this. But as it turned out, old Mike Nelson, he agreed to dance with her. It wasn't anything about the girl at all. We just didn't want to be in that darn folk dance anymore. I hated it. And so my last dance probably was with Lee Williams. Of course, she was a very pretty girl, both her and her sister. And so I was fortunate to actually have a partner like her. This was 1973. And so you can see the yearbook here, both her and her sister there together. She had a brother as well, Jody, and I think they called him Motor Mouth because he all the time talked about motorcycles, but I think that was him. It could have been someone else. That's another picture of her there. But, you know, one of the reasons why I wanted to get out of this folk dance is this white milkmans, as I called them, and some of my friends would make fun of me and say, Chuck, how many bottles of milk did you deliver today? You know, so I wasn't too keen on getting made fun of wearing this silly outfit. And of course, it kind of brought back memories of the old milkman too. They used to show up and deliver milk. I remember them coming and doing that back then. And of course, there were quite a few jokes that went along with that, for those that are old enough to remember. And I often wonder, maybe that's where this slogan came from. Wasn't a coronation that's going on. But apparently, there must have been a hot address here because look how many guys are trying to get this milk to the door. Now, that's possible she may have just had hot coffee. But, you know, 75, I was gone, and this is me at the Lyman War Military Academy with my mother and my granddad. And I hadn't even started there yet. That's being my John Bonham, not John Bonham, but John Paul Jones haircut. And of course, that would be shaved off very shortly. And so the only thing that changed going from, well, it was quite a bit of a change from going to organic to Lyman War Military Academy. No more folk dancing, but we had those darn milkmans. I actually had this darn thing there. It was a dress uniform that we wore sometimes. And so I got to thinking about the Threes Company in this at organic, and I got to thinking about, well, who do I know at the military academy that resembled someone? And this guy named Charles Pollock, he was one of the instructors there, and he looked just like Dano from Hawaii Five-0. In fact, I even called him, that's my yearbook. I even put Dano down there in the name. And so we would go around campus every time someone seen him, say, book him, Dano, book him, Dano. He finally got a little bit tired of hearing that. So anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I was going to make this include some other things. I'm trying to keep these short, but I need your help too. I need some reels. If you have any of these empty 8mm reels, but they don't have to be empty. If they have film on them, I'll take them that way because I can actually use the film to make splices. So if the film's on there, please leave it. I can use it. And you can get in contact with me by texting me at that number. I'm getting so many darn spoof calls that I'm only answering calls that I have in my phone book. You can also email me at that address below. But also subscribe to this channel. And there's also a notification bell to click as well if you want to be notified when the next episode comes out. I've got several more coming. They're going to be pretty good too. I hope you've enjoyed them. And thanks for taking part of this. And I also have the Facebook page for the students and alumni. You don't have to be a graduate to be a part of that. And I'll see you on the next one, guys. Take care.